Do you by chance? Okay. Do you by chance follow the account? I think they're on. They're probably on TikTok too, but I follow them on Instagram. There I ruined it.
Yes. Yes,
Did
I
you see the
do.
one recently where they did Thriller and it was like a
It was
bluegrass?
bluegrass. And it wasn't half bad, dude.
Oh God, I love that
It
channel.
wasn't half bad.
Oh, they all sound good the way they
Yeah.
do it, and
Oh
you're
yeah.
like,
Oh no, there's been a
how does
couple
this
that
sound
were
good?
terrible, but on purpose. I mean, they were
Yeah.
they were trying to ruin it, and they
Oh
did.
God, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so
No, the
much.
bluegrass thriller was actually really good.
Welcome to the Greatest Lists podcast, a show about music and lists. This season, your hosts Jason and Eric are counting down the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s and the top 25 guitar solos of the 90s. Think your favorite made the list? Tune in and find out. Take it away, boys.
Welcome to Greatest Lists, a music and talk podcast featuring lists of the greatest songs of all time. I am Eric, your host for this, the final episode of our show. If you're a regular listener, you'll know that a couple of weeks ago, my regular sidekick and co-host Jason passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. And to be quite honest, at the time, I was not planning to finish the show at all. I actually had 3 episodes in the can with already recorded with Jason, and I had no plan to produce those or to even finish the list. But I felt like with some encouragement from some people at the Retro Network and just my own thoughts about Jason, I figured Jason would want me to finish the list. And so here we are, finishing the list with our final 3 songs. But I'm not here alone. If you had any experience at all with our parent group, the Retro Network, you've probably seen or heard this guy or even read some of his content. He's the co-founder, if you will, along with Jason of the Retro Network. I have young Mickey Yarber with me here on the show. How's it going, Mick?
It's going well. It's been a long time since I've sat in the podcast seat, so I'm excited.
And full disclosure, I put Mickey on the bit of a spot on the hot seat with this. If you've listened to any of the bonus shows that I've done, where I'm talking by myself and there's no co-host, it sounds very like sounds like I'm reading on the Audible book and I'm talking to nobody. It's very not natural, and so I wanted somebody to bounce all the information off of, and plus it's just better when we do a conversation with this kind of stuff. That was probably my favorite part of the show with Jason, was just the conversations we'd have on the mic and off the mic. And so I asked Mickey to jump in, and without hesitation, Mickey said he would join us. So Mickey, I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, so like I said, we have the top 3 songs left in the list, and if you're a regular listener, you know the format of the regular format of our shows. But since we actually have 4 songs to cover because we have co-number 1 songs. So since we have 4 songs, we're going to put aside our regular format of the show and just cover our 4 songs and talk a little bit about them and take it from there. So when last we left you with our number 4 song. So now we're up to number 3, and our number 3 song in the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s belongs to Eddie Van Halen and Michael Jackson. This is Beat It. So the original guitar parts on this song belong to a guy named Steve Lukather of Toto fame. We've actually featured Steve in both our 90s list and earlier in our 80s list for some solos that he played for Richard Marx. To start with, Quincy Jones, who was producing the Thriller album, where this song came from, had a hard time getting a hold of Eddie Van Halen because Eddie Van Halen thought somebody was pranking him. And so it took, if I remember right, it took Quincy Jones 4 times to finally get Eddie on the phone. And so Eddie of course, Eddie's part of Van Halen. And at the time, the band had kind of an unwritten agreement amongst the four of them that they would not contribute any music to anybody else's albums. They would just keep it in-house and not play or sing or do anything for anybody else's albums. But when Quincy called Eddie and finally talked to him and invited him to come play, and these are Eddie's words. Eddie said, the rest of the band was out of town. He was the only one in Los Angeles at the time. Everybody was on vacation or doing something, and he was the only one in town. He goes, I thought to myself, who's going to hear this Black Kids album anyway? I might as well do it.
Oh, gosh.
Well, welcome to Thriller, Eddie. So the story goes that when Quincy invited Eddie into the studio, and he heard the track that he wanted Eddie to play. Eddie heard the track that they wanted him to play on. He didn't like what he heard. He didn't like the section of the song that he wanted to play over. And he asked Quincy, he said, do you care if I make some changes? And Quincy said, do whatever you want. And so Eddie had the producer and the engineer chop up the song, the solo section of the song. He just had him copy certain parts over and chop it in here and do this and rearranged it. And then in a matter of less than an hour, he had that chopped down and he improvised 2 solos over that section that he had put together. And he was just finishing the second solo when Michael Jackson walked back into the studio. And in Eddie's own words, he goes, artists are kind of crazy people. We're all a little bit strange. I didn't know how he would react to what I was doing. So I warned him before he listened. I said, look, I made some changes to the middle section of your song. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't like it. And Eddie continued by saying, in my mind, he's either going to have his bodyguards throw me out or he's going to like it. So Michael sat down, listened to the song, and turned to Eddie and said, wow, thank you so much for having enough passion for my song to change it and not just lay down a guitar solo and walk out.
Wow.
And so literally within an hour, Eddie chopped up the middle of the song to arrange it the way he wanted it, laid down just two solos off the top of his head. And the one you hear in the song now is the second one that he laid down. And that's how that became the solo for Beat It.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Well, I've got 3 thoughts.
Okay.
One, I love stories like this when he said he thought somebody was pranking him. It always seems like somebody who is famous can't believe that another famous person is calling them. Right? I mean, you hear these stories all the time.
Yeah.
So, I love hearing those stories.
Yeah.
And 2, not just music, but it seems to happen a lot more in music. That kind of talent to just create on the spot, and not just create something, but to create something that we're talking about today.
Yes.
What is it? 40 years now? What did that album come out in 83?
82.
82?
Yeah. So 41 years.
So to pop off something like that off of your head, that that's going to last eons, as long as music is around, right?
Sure.
So that's impressive.
Yeah.
And my third thought was, has it ever been released? You talked about him moving stuff and chopping it up and changing it. Has the original, before he touched it, ever been released?
Yes. You can hear that. I say you still can. In the past, you've been able to look that up on YouTube and hear. And what it was before was it was just one chord just playing over and over and over. And Eddie didn't like that there wasn't, a chord progression that he could play over, because that's how most songs are. There's a chord progression for a solo, and you just play over that chord progression. He didn't, and that's why he changed it, because there was just one chord. But yeah, you can find it. I've heard it. It's nothing. It's not anything earth shattering. It's just a chord. But yeah, you can hear it, and it sounds vastly different. I would venture to say that he made that song what it is because of the changes he made.
Well, actually, that brings on a fourth thought then. So if they had a kind of a gentleman's agreement to not contribute to anything else,
Yeah.
what was the eventual reaction when this, who's going to hear this Black Kids song anyway? What was the eventual reaction when it became a mega hit?
I don't know that I've ever. I mean, I know that they were mad at him for doing it because literally all he got paid for it was just his name on the recording. He didn't get paid to do that. And so I know that they were mad. I know that there was some. No, I don't want to say mad, but they were upset with him for breaking the agreement. But I mean, how can you be mad at that? I mean, after 40 years, how can you still be mad at that? So
yeah.
But back to what you were saying about how somebody can just record something that off the top of their head like that. When guitar players write solos, they actually write solos. They, and especially in my experience, I can tell you in the past when I've recorded, I know what I'm going to play for a solo when I go into the studio to record. I sit down, I practice it, I lay it out. I know what I'm going to play. I don't just go into a studio and just bang something out and I'm done with it. Most guitar players write a solo. They don't just pull one out of their rear ends, so to speak. But what you can also find on YouTube is the solo track of Eddie playing. You can hear just his solo, not all the other music around it. And when you listen to it, you really get the feel for how off the cuff and how just off the top of his head that entire solo is. He didn't sit because he had never heard it. He'd never heard this song or this section of music before he walked into that studio and chopped it up and put it in the order that he wanted. And you can hear how off the cuff and just off the top of his head this solo is. And for him to only do 2 takes and then be done with it, and then that's what you have. That's what you hear in the song is that right there. It just blows my mind. And Steve Lukather, the session guitar player, he was a session guitar player for most of Thriller. He corroborates that story that it wasn't like he had heard it for a couple of days beforehand and put something together. He walked in, chopped it up, laid down 2 solos, and he was done. And this is what you get, a song that, just like you said, it's going to stand the test of time for eons, and it's still around 40 years later, and it's played on TV and XM, on satellite and radio. And he did that in less than an hour.
That's just incredible.
I know. It blows me away to think that's and the other part that blows me away still when I giggle when I think about it is when he says, "Who's going to hear this Black Kids record anyway?" I mean, it just cracks me up. I mean, that he had no idea at the time. I mean, even then at that time, Michael Jackson was a fairly big deal. I mean,
right.
The Jackson 5 had been out. Off the Wall had been a huge success.
He's Tito's brother.
That's exactly right. It just makes me giggle when he puts it that way. Who's going to hear this Black Kids album anyway? So
he had no idea what the world was on the verge of.
No idea, none at all. So just a couple of history points about this song. I remember it being on MTV like just nonstop. It was on all the time. And what I remember about that is
MTV used to play music videos?
It's true. I know it's hard to believe, but yes, they did at one time. In the video, he's wearing this light blue shirt under this red leather jacket that has some like chainmail on the shoulders, on the lapel. And I cannot tell you how many people, especially in my junior high, were trying to emulate that look all the time. I mean, it was just, and there was a just a slew knockoff jackets and shirts that people were trying to emulate for that, that look in that video. And I also remember that the story going around about the video that there were like 75 or 80 actual gang members in the video. Because if you remember the video, it's two rival gangs that come together for a dance off. But
like they all used to do,
like they're known to do. But apparently, when they first started filming the video, Michael Jackson didn't think it looked authentic enough, and so they actually went out and got I think close to 80 gang members, actual gang Bloods and Crips, to come be part of the video. So the people that you see in the video are actual Bloods and Crips gang members.
Huh.
And I just find that terrifying.
But they kept the peace, though. It was like an early version of We Are the World.
At any moment, those two groups could have just erupted, because at that point there had not been that famous Bloods and Crips peace agreement that happened in LA, I think in like 84 or 85. And so at any moment, those two groups could have just exploded on one another, and Michael Jackson kept the peace. So
Wow.
I know, crazy, huh? So that's our number 3 song, Beat It, from Michael Jackson and Eddie Van Halen. Which brings us to our number 2 song. It's from the band Living Colour. This is Cult of Personality. So let me give you a little background about how Jason and I would rank songs in our countdowns.
Okay.
Let's take this list. So we were ranking the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s. And so Jason created this little spreadsheet and put 25 spots on it. And one of us would go first and put a song in the 25th spot. And then the other person would put something in the 24th spot. And we'd work our way up to number 1. And no one would pick number 1. We would just agree on what it would be. So, we're working our way up this list one by one. And of course number 3, the Beat It was my choice. So I put that at number 3, which in hindsight, I feel like it probably should have been number 1, but that's just hindsight. So I put number 3, I put Beat It number 3, and we would do this online. And so, there'd be a blank spreadsheet, but then I'd fill in a spot, and then I'd see Jason fill in a spot. So you're watching this list fill up in real time online. And I put number 3, Beat It, on the list, and we were also chatting on Slack, and he was like, "Oh, good choice." And then all of a sudden he fills in number 2, and it's Cult of Personality by Living Colour. And don't get me wrong, I love Living Colour. They're an incredible band, and I even like their guitar player, Vernon Reid. I just didn't think that this song belonged in the number 2 spot on the the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s. And so we had a spirited discussion on maybe put that down lower in the list and promote one of your other songs. And I just couldn't ever talk him out of it. He was like, this was one of his favorite solos, and he just insisted that it stay at number 2. And so this is why Cult of Personality from Living Colour is at number 2, because I couldn't talk Jason out of putting it down lower and bringing the song up. So that's why we have what I think of as an anomaly of a guitar solo this high on the list, is because Jason picked it out.
Well, I was never much of an 80s music person. You've heard my stories and my dad's music, and I grew up traveling with him. So this wasn't my normal stuff. So I'd heard it a couple of times. I didn't really gain an appreciation for it or any real relationship to it until CM Punk come along wrestling.
Yes.
So now, and before he brought the song back, in recent years, when he was younger and wasn't known, so to speak, he was using it all the time then. And I thought then, like, being a lifelong wrestling fan, like, that's an awesome song to come out to for wrestling. So it's been a part of my life since the very early 2000s because of CM Punk,
That's
but
so
it wasn't
funny.
a part of my life in the 80s. Now, whether it belongs number 2 on the list or not, I'm not going to argue with Jason's choice. It's not my place to. It wouldn't be on my top 25 either.
Right.
But damn it is good though.
Yeah. No, it's a great song, and I've always loved like that the album. So it came out. It's on their 1988 debut album, Vivid, and I have a high appreciation for that album. I remember listening to it constantly when it first came out. This song and one of the songs that was going to share our dual number one. These two songs were blaring out of a dorm room my freshman year in college on any given day. So I love this song. I just don't have the appreciation for the guitar solo that Jason did. With that said, though, at the '89 MTV Music Awards, this song took home Best Stage Performance, Best New Artist, Best Group Video, and it also won the Grammy in '89 for the Best Rock Performance. So, a bit of a hit, kind of a big deal. Guitarist Vernon Reid, whose guitar style has been described as eclectic and complete anarchy, was voted number 66 on Rolling Stone's 100 Greatest Guitarists of All Time in 2013. And he told Guitar Magazine in 1988 that the solos that you hear in the song, he nailed all of those on the first take. Which, in my when I read that, I was like, well, if you didn't, how would anybody know? I mean,
right.
Yeah. But he also, during the song, he employs a wah-wah pedal to get that effect that you hear on the solo. And in 2015, Guitar Magazine voted it the number 23 greatest wah-wah solo of all time. Which, keep that in mind, because that list comes back up here in about 10 minutes. So, I've already given my personal connection to the song is just, I love the album. I've always loved the album. I just have never really connected with Vernon Reid as a guitar player. I think he's tremendous. He plays a lot of jazz and jazz fusion. And if you listen to any of that from him, he is incredible. I'm not slighting his guitar ability at all. And he is lightning fast on the guitar to boot. So I don't want to take anything away from Vernon Reid as a guitar player. In fact, they're still playing. That to this day, the band is still playing.
Oh yeah.
About
when CM Punk brought the song back, they performed him to the ring live on a big show like in the last 10 years.
That's awesome.
It was incredible.
Several months ago, there was something called the 80s Cruise. It's just an 80s themed cruise. But they have like some of the original MTV VJs are your co-hosts on the cruise and some other people. Well, I follow one of the VJs, Mark Goodman, on Instagram. And he posted a video, and on that cruise, Living Colour was playing on the cruise. And he posted a video on Instagram one night of Living Colour when they were playing live. And they sound ridiculous. I mean, this many years on, and they still sound, he actually showed a clip of them playing Cult of Personality, and it was ridiculous how good it was still. So I don't slight them as musicians at all. I don't slight Vernon Reid as a guitar player at all. He's fantastic. I just have never connected to this solo the way Jason did. He was very adamant about it too. I will give.
That's one of the great things about music and a lot of different forms of art. You don't have to be a personal fan of something to appreciate how good that artist is.
Sure.
Right. Like, while I'm not the biggest 80s music fan, I can certainly see talent in a whole lot of these bands. It's just their particular type of music just don't normally float my boat. This is kind of the same thing, right? I'm not going to go out of my way probably to look up other solos by him, but I can't even sit here and deny that he's not one talented mofo.
That's a good way to put it.
I'm not sure what the language. I'm not sure what the language barrier is on this show, so I trimmed it back some.
I love it. He's one talented. I can guarantee you that Vernon Reid has never been described as one talented mofo to his face. So he would probably enjoy that. Hey.
Well, he's not met me.
Yeah, there you go. So number 2 on the list is Cult of Personality from Living Colour, which brings us to our co-number ones. Jason and I went back and forth on these songs. Like I said, we would fill the list up until number 1, and then we would come to a consensus on number 1. And when we got to this one, I said, well, and these are literally my words. I said, well, number 1 can only belong to one band. And I'll give you 3 guesses of who that is. And Jason guessed the band. And I was like, yep, you're totally right. And I bet you can guess a song. And he was like, yep. And he named the song, and it was not the song I was thinking of. And I went, wait, what? He was like, well, yeah. I'm like, no, it's got to be this. He's like, no, it can't be that. This blows out. I mean, so we literally went back and forth on this one for, days, literally days.
Before you say it,
sure.
That's a real testament to who, because I know these songs, but it's a real testament to the band you're referring to, that you can get into an argument over which one of 2 of their songs is number 1. That's incredible.
I mean, it's
because in your mind you're like, well, this can only be one song.
I mean,
in Jason's mind, this can only be one song, but it's 2 different songs.
That's exactly what it was. That's what it came down to. I mean, it was so funny. I mean, now in hindsight, it was just so funny that I was like, I bet you can guess a song. Yep, it's this. And I was like, nope, it's not. So we went back and forth for a couple of days, literally. I mean, we would send each other messages saying, are you ready to change your mind yet? And finally, I just like, you know what? Let's just have co-number ones, because you're not going to convince me that your song is right, and I'm not going to convince you that you're wrong. So,
and at the same time, could you picture the other song being not anywhere in the top 25?
Well, and this is what I told him. I said, hey, we could bump Living Colour down, and we could put yours at number 2. And he didn't like that. And literally, I'm not going to lie, dude, when I was putting these notes together for the show, I was like, I could have my way. Nobody would be none the wiser. But Jason, if you're listening from somewhere, anywhere, I didn't do it. Okay, your song's still up here at co-number 1. So our co-number ones, and I'm gonna play them one at a time. But our co-number 1 songs are "Sweet Child of Mine" and "Paradise City" from Guns N' Roses, which I think we covered. I think Jason and I covered this when we first started this, even for the 90s. Because we had some feedback from people that were bothered by some of our choices. That we're not saying that these guys on the list were the best guitarists of their, whatever, the 90s or the 80s. These solos are what we think are the best solos. And so I'll let you. So of those 2 songs, Jason picked "Sweet Child of Mine," and I picked "Paradise City." So let's start with Guns N' Roses and "Sweet Child of Mine." So, of course, this is from their debut album, Appetite for Destruction. This song is their only number 1. It hit number 1 on the Billboard chart in September of '88 and stayed there for 2 weeks. And like I mentioned with Living Colour, this song was blaring out of dorm rooms every morning my freshman year of college. So that September, that was my freshman year of college. And this song, either this song or "Cult of Personality," were blaring out of somebody's dorm room every morning when I was walking to the showers. That's probably the most vivid memory I have of this song. It's just that it reminds me of my freshman year of college. So for some background behind the song, Slash, the guitar player Slash, he's the guitar player for Guns N' Roses, of course. Says he came up with a riff one day in rehearsal. And he was just playing around with it on guitar. He thought it was silly, and wanted nothing really to do with it. It was just a finger exercise. But Axl Rose, the lead singer, fell in love with it and made him keep playing it. And while I kept playing it, the rhythm guitarist, Izzy Stradlin, added some chords to it. And then Duff McKagan, the bass player, and Steven Adler, the drummer, joined in too. And before they knew it, they had a song, and it all came together in just this one rehearsal time that they had. As most hit songs do. As most hit songs just happen that way. Slash has always considered this the worst Guns N' Roses song of all. He's not a huge fan of it. But for his solo in the song, he breaks out the wah-wah pedal. Remember, I said to keep that one list in mind. And this song lands at number 3 on the Guitar World's 2015 list of greatest wah-wah solos of all time. So he ends up in the top 3 with this solo. The guitar solo is also ranked number 37 in Guitar World's list of 100 greatest guitar solos of all time that they put out in 2013. So this was Jason's pick, and while I don't slight it in the least, it's a great solo. Slash. What you have to think about with Slash and this album is that he was completely altered 90% of the time.
Yeah,
chemically altered 90% of the time, and he was able to play what you hear on this album.
It's like me when I go bowling. I'm always better when I'm drinking. It's
the exact same thing. That's what I would have.
Yes.
That's the example I would have come up with too. This is a great solo. It's just got it's got a great feel to it, and we've talked about not only in this list but the '90s list. We've heard other guitar players say that a good guitar solo is one that you can sing along to, and I bet if you were to listen to "Sweet Child of Mine," you could probably sing along while he's playing the solo. Because you've probably heard it a million times, and it's just that kind of solo that you can sing along to. So I don't slight this guitar. I don't not like this guitar solo. I just think there's another one on this album that's better than that. And so let's get to that song now. My pick from Guns N' Roses was "Paradise City." So this is the first song that the original Guns N' Roses lineup of Slash, Steven Adler, Duff McKagan, Axl Rose, Izzy Stradlin. This is the first song that they all wrote together, and they actually wrote it in the back of a cargo van while they were driving to a gig one night. It came together on a couple of acoustic guitars, and by the time they reached their destination, they had written this song again, as it always happens. When do you write a hit song? When I'm in the back of a cargo van with 5 other guys. It reached number 5 on the Billboard chart, so it didn't reach number 1. And there's actually been some dispute in the past as to whether or not Slash is actually playing the solos on this song, because it doesn't necessarily sound like his playing on the rest of the album. But since those rumors have happened, not only he but other band members and the producer have all verified that Slash is the one playing on this song. What I think sets this song apart from "Sweet Child of Mine" is at the end of the song, the last two minutes or so of the song are in double time, when the song speeds up and it's just a frenetic. They're just singing the chorus over and over again, and behind that, Slash is just losing his damn mind, playing a solo, and it's just, it's nonstop. From the time that double time starts till the song ends, he is soloing over all of that. And there are some licks in there that are just incredible licks. And so for me, that's what sets this song apart from "Sweet Child of Mine," is that entire 2 minutes of where he's just playing frenetically and nonstop, and they're just incredibly fast and bluesy, and just tasty little licks in that last 2 minutes of that song. That's what sets this song apart for me over Sweet Child of Mine. And that's what I could not convince Jason of when we were talking about it.
Well, I'm going to tell you, these two songs, Guns N' Roses, when they come along, and I first got my first taste of them, is when my 80s music love, hair metal love really kicked in.
Right.
Been Guns N' Roses since day one.
Yeah.
But my attitude on these two particular songs has changed through the years. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Stoned Age or not.
No.
But it's from the 90s. Anyway, this one guy's talking about loving the song Don't Fear the Reaper from Blue Oyster Cult, set in the 70s. And his buddy's teasing him, and I'm not going to repeat his word that he used in the movie. I'm going to change it. He said, man, every band puts one song on their albums to see who the sissies are, the people who like that song.
Yes.
So when in the early days, that's how I felt about Sweet Child of Mine, right? It was different on the album from everything else. I mean, because I was a big fan of obviously Welcome to the Jungle, but Paradise City and Rocket Queen was probably my third favorite.
Yeah.
It's So Easy and Mr. Brownstone and all these hard rocking hits.
All the hard ones, right.
Yeah. And then here's Sweet Child of Mine. I'm like, what is this? Now, it sounded good, right? But it didn't fit. It
does
play
stand out. Yes.
You'd play the CD and it would get up to that song and you hit the forward button and go on past, or I would, right?
That's awesome.
But as time has went on in life, and I've had kids, and you pay more attention to the lyrics as you get older versus when you're just listening to the music when you're younger. Sweet Child of Mine has supplanted Paradise City for me. Now, I haven't really thought about it from the solo standpoint, right?
Sure.
And I'm not going to pick one or the other here. But as a song as a whole, I was Paradise City #1 for a long time, but these days it's Sweet Child of Mine for me.
Maybe I picked the wrong guy to be on this show.
Like I said, I'm not comparing the solos. I'm just the song in general.
No, I get it. I was the same as you. I loved this album. I literally had to buy a second tape because I wore this tape out when I first bought it. And I was the same as you. I was more into, Mr. Brownstone is So Easy, all the harder, all the, Out to Get Me, all of those. Those were yes. And then like you, it would hit Sweet Child of Mine and I would fast forward the tape because I was just, the rest of it is just so good and so hard that, you're right. Sweet Child of Mine does not fit on this album, but it's still a great song. It's still an awesome song. It just doesn't. I'm in the same boat as you. It just did not fit with the rest of the songs on this album, which is probably why it was the only #1 song. Because
it's like a bottle of Bartles and James and a cooler full of Coors Light. It just don't quite fit.
It does not look right in there. So anyway, those ended up being our two #1s. And honestly, I was amazed that we actually picked the same band to be #1. That was the amazing part. Whether we picked the same song or not, it doesn't really matter. It was our show and we could do whatever we wanted to. But I was really amazed that I did not expect him to say Guns N' Roses when I said, I bet you can name the band. He goes, Guns N' Roses. Yep. I bet you can name the song. Sweet Child of Mine. Nope, that's wrong.
Wait, what?
Wait, what? No.
You're ruining this.
You're ruining this best list of all. So anyway, those are our two #1s, Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City from Guns N' Roses, and that is our list of top 25 guitar solos of the 80s. Now, we had started a honorable mentions list, and we were going to do it like after we'd got done with the full list, we were going to do an honorable mentions show. And if you've listened to any of our previous episodes, you know that we have bonus songs at the end of the show. And so we had 10 songs on our honorable mentions, which was in hindsight is a lot of honorable mentions. I'm going to pick 3 songs off of there. and play those as our bonus songs for this episode. The first one is one I put on there, and it's really kind of a anomaly. It's a Rick Astley song. It would take a strong man. It's got a nice little acoustic solo in the middle that is just very tasty, and I've always thought it was just an incredible guitar solo. It's not overly technical. It just is. It's just you just have to listen to it. That'll be our first bonus song, Rick Astley. Our second bonus song is from Motley Crue, and the video that stayed on top of TRL for like 2 months on MTV, Home Sweet Home. Again, it's not the most technical guitar solo in the world, but it has got so much emotion and feeling in it when he's playing it. That's one of the guitar solo that I can sing along to. It's always been one of my favorites, and so that's going to be our second bonus song. The third one is, we actually used it in season 1, in our soundtrack song list, but Jason was still wanting to put it on the honorable mention list, and so the third bonus song is Purple Rain from Prince. He is just an incredible guitar player, and if you get a chance, you need to look up Prince playing the solo for While My Guitar Gently Weeps. That is, he walks out onto a stage full of guitar players and puts them all to shame.
Yes, I have watched that video 100 times.
I have too. It is so delicious. I love that.
Was that at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No, it was for it was a memorial show for was it George Harrison? That's gonna
maybe.
It was a memorial show. It wasn't for the Rock Hall, I don't believe. But I mean, people on stage are like Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne from ELO. I mean, I can't remember who all's on that stage, but literally, Prince just walks out and just lays it on the table and just puts them all to shame. But the solo in Purple Rain is just as beautiful as that one is too. And we covered Purple Rain in our soundtrack list last season. So that'll be our third and final bonus song. If you have Spotify Premium, which is what we've always recommended, stay tuned because you're going to hear those 3 songs in their entirety at the end of the episode. Free Spotify users are going to be the same as always. You'll get about 30 seconds of the song, and then you're going to wish you had more. Outside of Spotify, you can check out the Song Whip links in our show notes to get the links to all these songs in your favorite music app. So that brings us to the end. This is it for the show. I considered I'm not even lying when I say we had at least 3 other seasons lined up, ideas lined up, and I'm not even going to entertain doing that on my own. Like I said at the beginning of the show, most of the fun of this show was the banter back and forth with Jason and us telling stories from when we were younger. And you just can't recreate that on your own. And I think it was lightning in a bottle. And so I'm not even going to dishonor what we've done by trying to do it on my own. And I think I said when I put out the little short audio snippet about Jason's passing, he had to talk me into this show. It was his idea. I liked it, but I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not. He talked me into it, and it probably was the best choice I've made in the past 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
We learned a lot about each other, and we also learned that when we were younger, we were the same person. Just some of our history and some of our things that we had gone through, and some of our life experience, we were the same person. And I joined the Retro Network because I met Mickey. And I met Jason along the way, and I got to know him really well doing this show. And I don't think I ever want to soil that experience by doing this on my own or with anybody else. So this is it. This is the end of the road for the Greatest Lists podcast. You can still find us at YouTube at Greatest Lists or on our website, greatestlistpodcast.com. We still have a Twitter account at Greatest Lists. I don't know how long those will stay up, probably in perpetuity until they get taken down. But this is the last new content that you're going to hear from us. So if you've listened to us for any length of time at all, we appreciate you. We've got some feedback from users every once in a while, and we loved it all, and we love doing the show. It was a blast, and we appreciate anybody and everybody that took time to download the show and listen to it. So, Mickey, I appreciate you being here and being my sounding board. It was a lot more fun doing it this way than just talking into the great black void and not knowing if I was on the mark. So I appreciate you, buddy, for being here.
And I appreciate everything you've done. I mean, this show, Jason loved it. He used to talk behind the scenes to me a lot and talked about how much fun he had doing the show. And, Jason and I, we recorded more than our fair share of shows together. And you two guys together are just as entertaining, and it's sad to see it go. But
it is.
I understand, and just good job.
I appreciate it. So for Mickey and for Jason and for me, we appreciate you. Take care of yourselves. Peace and progress.
You've been listening to The Greatest Lists.